I'm Liz, and by some twist of fate, I'm married to the most amazing guy I've ever met, Alex. We're both 28, got our own place, pay our bills, and live a life that's ours. It's been a year since we said I do, and honestly, life's been good, except for one little thing, Alex's parents. Now don't get me wrong, I never expected to be the daughter-in-law in shining armor, but I also didn't expect to be the family's unwanted guest. The day I met my in-laws, it felt like walking into a lion's den with a stake tied to my neck. My mother-in-law, Jane, had this way of looking at me like she was trying to figure out if I was more of a nuisance or just plain boring. I could tell she had sized me up and found me lacking before I even had a chance to say, hello. Alex had warned me about his mom. She can be a bit much, he said as we drove to their place that first time, but don't take it to heart, okay? I didn't, or at least I tried not to. At dinner, I was passing the salt when Jane said, "You know, Stephanie used to cook such wonderful meals. Remember that risotto, honey?" She said to Alex, who just nodded, his jaw tight. "Yeah, I remember," he replied, not looking at me. I sat there, salt shaker in hand, feeling like I was invisible. They all talked about Stephanie as if I wasn't there. I felt a pang in my chest, but I swallowed it down with a smile. "Sounds like she was a great cook," I said, trying to seem unaffected. Jane's eyes met mine, and she smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, she was. She was a lot of things, that night. I told Alex how I felt. "It's like she's measuring me against some ghost," I said. Alex hugged me close. "You're the one I chose, Liz. That's all that matters." I wanted to believe him, but as I'd learned, Jane had a long game in mind, and I was the pawn she was eager to sacrifice. I just didn't know it yet. Living with an allergy isn't just inconvenient. It's like having a shadow that's constantly whispering danger in your ear. Since I was a kid, peanuts have been my arch nemesis. It started with a spoonful of peanut paste and a trip to the emergency room that left my parents with a crystal clear message. Keep her away from peanuts, and a whole host of other foods if you want her to grow up. It's not just peanuts, though. Soy, peas, cherries, almonds, tomatoes, apricots, bananas, and even potatoes are all off limits. It's a list that makes waiters raise an eyebrow and friends hesitate to invite me over for dinner. It's also a list that my mother-in-law Jane knows by heart, yet she somehow manages to question every single time we're over for dinner. "Are you sure you can't even have a little bit of this pie? It's got almond extract," she'd ask, with a tone that hovered between concern and disbelief. I would smile politely, though I'd rather not, and say, "Yeah, I'm sure. Thanks, though." It was the same dance every time. I remember once at a family gathering, I was navigating the buffet, a mental checklist running through my head. Alex was by my side, plate in hand, trying to help me find something safe to eat. That's when Jane swooped in, her voice sickly sweet. "Liz, you must try this casserole. I made sure it was Liz-friendly," she announced. But the glint in her eye didn't match her nurturing words. Alex paused, his fork mid-air. "Mom, you used cream of mushroom soup in this, right?" he asked, knowing full well that many brands included soy. A big no-no for me. Jane's smile faltered for a second. "Oh, I think so. It should be fine." But it wasn't fine, and we both knew it. We made our excuses, me leaving the casserole untouched, but the incident stuck with me. It was a small victory in what felt like an ongoing battle, a battle where Jane held all the cards because she controlled the kitchen. I've learned to navigate this world with careful steps. Eating out is a strategic operation. Alex and I were at our favorite Italian place, a rare find that understood the gravity of food allergies. I'd recited my usual spiel to the waiter, who nodded understandingly. Alex watched me with those soft eyes of his, the ones that said he'd do anything to make my life easier. "You okay?" he asked after the waiter left. "Yeah, I'm fine. I just hate making a fuss," I replied, folding my napkin on my lap. You're not making a fuss, you're making sure you don't, die, he said, half joking, half serious. I laughed, a short, grateful sound. Well, when you put it that way. After dinner, as we walked under the clear night sky, I felt light, happy. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Jane. Her words were like a cloud over the moon, darkening the moment. Be careful, Liz. Not everyone takes your condition seriously. Wouldn't want anything to happen to you. I read the text to Alex, who wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. She's just trying to get to you, he said. But as much as I wanted to shrug it off, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's message was more than just a jab. It was a warning, a reminder that my allergy made me vulnerable, not just to food, but to people like her who saw it as a weakness to be exploited. The rest of the walk home, I couldn't help but think about all the close calls, all the accidental exposures, and how easily something could go wrong. It wasn't just the peanuts or the soy or the peas. It was the realization that my allergy was more than a personal battle. It was a chink in my armor that someone like Jane could see as an opportunity. And that thought was scarier than any allergic reaction I'd ever had. Dinners at Jane's house were always a production, like a play where everyone knew their parts except me. I was the wild card, the one who could unintentionally cause a scene with a single bite. Alex tried to make it better, but there's only so much you can do when you're playing in someone else's home court. One particular evening, the tension was as thick as the gravy on the table. Jane was bustling around, placing dish after dish on the table. I sat there, my own plate empty, waiting to figure out what I could eat without a trip to the hospital. Alex, darling, pass the green beans to Liz. They're just divine, Jane said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't reach her eyes. I eyed the beans, but something seemed off. What's in them? I asked. Oh, just a touch of almond slivers for crunch, she said, waving a hand dismissively. I put my hand up, stopping Alex's reach. I can't eat those, remember? Almonds are a no-go for me, Jane, I said. Faint surprise, a hand to her chest. Oh dear, I must have forgotten. Silly me, Jane replied. Alex's chair scraped back as he stood up. Mom, this is serious. Liz could end up in the hospital. His voice was firm-edged with a frustration that made Jane's eyes narrow just a little. I just wanted to make something nice, she said. It's not my fault Liz has all these allergies. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The other relatives glanced around. Forks paused mid-air, not sure where to look. I felt a flush creeping up my neck, embarrassed by the spotlight. Alex's dad, Mark, tried to break the tension. Let's just enjoy the meal, shall we? There's plenty Liz can eat. But the damage was done. The rest of the dinner passed in strained politeness, with Jane asking pointed questions about my allergies as if she were taking notes for next time. Later, when Alex and I were alone, he apologized. I'm sorry, Liz. I should have double-checked everything before we came, he said. I shook my head, tired of feeling like a problem to be managed. It's not your fault, but I'm starting to think your mom does these things on purpose, I said. He didn't answer, and he didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Jane was serving up a bite of malice with every meal, and I was the main course. I could always tell when Jane had been working on Alex. He'd get this distant look in his eyes, like he was seeing me but also seeing through me, weighing her words against his own judgment. This particular evening, it was like a cloud had settled over him. Mom thinks we should consider... Well, she thinks we might not be thinking about the future enough, Alex muttered, not meeting my eye as he fumbled with the TV remote. The future? I asked, a sinking feeling in my gut. Yeah, kids and your health issues, he continued, the word issues hanging awkwardly in the air between us. Issues, I repeated, feeling a tightness in my chest. She talked to you about my allergies again, didn't she? He sighed, setting the remote down. She's just worried, Liz. She thinks it's a lot for us to handle, especially if we want a family. We've talked about this. I've managed so far, haven't I? And there are plenty of people with allergies who have kids, I said, bristling. I know. It's just, she has this way of making me doubt things, he admitted. The room was quiet for a moment, the tension thick. I watched him, this man I loved, wrestling with the seeds of doubt his mother had planted. Alex, do you doubt us? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. No, he looked up finnily, his eyes clear and firm. I don't. I just hate that she keeps bringing it up. I hate that it makes us fight. I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. We're not fighting. We're on the same side, remember? He nodded, pulling me into a hug. You and me against the world, right? Right, I said. But as I held him, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's words were like weeds threatening to grow wild and choke the life out of the beautiful thing we had. And I knew then that it wasn't just my allergies that needed managing. It was the doubts that could seep into the cracks of even the strongest relationships. The news of my pregnancy came as a surprise, a happy one for Alex and me, a complicated one for everyone else. The day we announced it to his parents, Jane's reaction was like watching a robot trying to mimic human emotions. A pause, then a smile that didn't quite match the situation. We're going to have a baby, Mom, Alex said, his voice a mix of pride and caution as he gauged his mother's reaction. That's wonderful, Jane managed to say, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. We must have a family dinner to celebrate. I was skeptical. Celebrations at Jane's were never just celebrations, but I saw the hopeful look in Alex's eyes and agreed. The night of the dinner, the house was buzzing with relatives. Jane was the perfect hostess, floating from guest to guest with a grace that felt almost genuine. When she reached us, her smile was practiced. Congratulations, Liz, she said. This is such a joyous occasion. Thank you, Jane, I replied, trying to match her formality. We're excited. Alex wrapped his arm around my waist, a silent thank you for playing along. As dinner approached, I felt the familiar anxiety. A table full of food was a minefield for me, but tonight I hoped would be different. The table was a feast, dishes upon dishes laid out, and I felt every eye on me as I hesitated, my hand hovering over the options. Go on, dear, Jane urged. Eat up. You're eating for two now. I smiled weakly, choosing the safest options, vegetables and rice, plain and simple. But as I reached for a slice of bread, Jane stopped me. Actually, maybe not that one, she said quickly. I'm not sure if the baker used soy flour. I paused, bread in hand, and met her gaze. There was a flicker of something there. Concern, or was it a challenge? Thank you for letting me know, I said, putting the bread down. But the warning bells were already ringing in my head. How did she know about the soy flour? It seemed too close a call, too perfect a save. The rest of the meal passed in a blur, congratulations mingling with the clinking of glasses. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's hospitality was a veneer, and beneath it lay a trap set, and waiting for just the right moment. The family dinner in honor of our future baby was nothing short of a banquet. Jane had outdone herself, and there was a spread that would make a Thanksgiving dinner look modest. But my stomach was in knots, not from hunger, but from fear. Every dish was a potential hazard, a hidden enemy that could send me to the hospital or worse. As we all took our seats, the chatter around the table was lively, filled with the usual family gossip and stories. Jane was at the head of the table, presiding over the feast like a queen in her court. She called everyone to attention with a gentle tap of her glass. Before we begin, she said, her voice steady and clear, I just want to say how thrilled we are to be celebrating Liz and Alex's upcoming addition to our family. There was a round of hearty hear, hear, and applause. I forced a smile, feeling Alex squeeze my hand under the table. Thank you, everyone, I said. We're really looking forward to this new chapter in our lives. The meal began, and I tentatively picked at my food, choosing the simplest items. Alex watched me, his brow furrowed with concern. "You doing okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, just being careful," I replied, pushing a roasted potato around my plate. Jane's eyes were on me, and I felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Liz, you haven't touched your salad," she said, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. "The dressing is on the side, just as you like it." "Thank you, Jane," I said. "I'm just not much of an appetite tonight." I avoided the salad that I knew could easily contain hidden allergens. As the dinner wore on, the tension grew. Every time Jane offered me something, my anxiety spiked. The room felt hot, the walls inching closer with each passing minute. Then came the cake. It was a beautiful confection, layers of sponge and cream that made the room ooh and ah. Jane cut a slice and handed it to me with a smile that might have been genuine if I had never known better for the mom-to-be, she said. I looked at the cake, then at Alex, then at Jane. "I really shouldn't," I said, "but it looks delicious." "Oh, come on, Liz. One little bite won't hurt for the baby," Jane pressed, her voice sweet as the icing. That's when Alex's dad, Mark, stepped in. His hand swift as he knocked the plate from my hands, the cake tumbled to the floor, and a stunned silence fell over the room. "What the hell, Dad?" Alex exclaimed, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. Mark stood, his face pale but his voice firm. "I saw the label in the trash. That cake has peanut oil in it." The room erupted in chaos. Jane's face was the picture of shock, but her eyes gave her away. There was a flash of something there, fear maybe, guilt. Alex stood, his chair clattering behind him. "Mom, did you know about this?" he demanded. Jane's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. And in that moment, the truth was as clear as the danger that had been on my plate. The room was dead silent after Mark's revelation, the dropped cake like a crime scene on the hardwood floor. Everyone's eyes were locked on Jane, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze. "Mom, is it true? Did you know?" Alex's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. Jane's eyes flickered with something dark before she regained her composure. "Of course not. I would never." Her voice trailed off, unconvincing. Mark wasn't having any of it. "I saw the shopping list, Jane. Peanut oil for cake. It was right there in your handwriting," he said, his voice steady but laced with disappointment. The murmurs around the table grew louder, a mix of disbelief and anger bubbling up from the family. Alex was shaking his head, his hands balled into fists. "How could you, Mom? Liz could have died," he said. I was frozen in my seat, the gravity of the situation anchoring me down. This wasn't just carelessness or forgetfulness. It was intentional. Jane's mask finally slipped, her face twisted in anger. "I didn't want it to come to this, but she's not right for you, Alex. She's weak, and now she's bringing a child into this world who will be just like her." Alex took a step toward his mother, incredulous. "Weak? Liz is the strongest person I know, and you— How could you be so cruel?" I could feel the eyes on me, waiting for me to break down, to crumble under the weight of Jane's words. But I didn't. "Jane," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "you've made your feelings very clear. But this is not just about me. This is about a family, your grandchild." Jane looked away. Her jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw the hint of fear in her eyes. Maybe she realized that her actions hadn't just endangered me, but her relationship with her son, her reputation, everything. The rest of the evening was a blur. There were arguments, tears, and hushed conversations, as the family tried to process what had happened. Alex and I left early, the weight of the evening heavy on our shoulders. We didn't speak much on the drive home. What was there to say? The truth was out, and with it, the facade of a polite, if not happy family was shattered. The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that's heavy, filled with things unsaid. When we finally walked through our front door, Alex and I just stood there, the echo of the night's drama still ringing in our ears. Alex was the first to break the silence. "I can't believe my own mother would do something like that," he said, his voice hollow. I sat down on the couch, the cushion failing to comfort me. "I know it's a lot to take in." He sat beside me, taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry, Liz. It's unforgivable." "It's not your fault, Alex. We couldn't have known she'd go this far," I said, trying to reassure him. But the truth was there, hanging between us. Jane had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The family was in pieces. Some stood by us, shocked and appalled by Jane's actions, while others struggled to wrap their heads around the reality of the situation. The next few days were a whirlwind. Alex's phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls. Relatives wanted to express their shock, their support, their apologies. And through it all, there was a deafening silence from Jane. No apologies, no explanations, nothing. Alex finally broke the news to me a week later. "Dad's left her. He can't get past what she did," he said, his voice heavy with sadness. He said it's been a long time coming. I wasn't sure how to feel. Relief, sadness, pity, and Jane. I asked tentatively, "How is she?" "She's not handling it well. She's alone now," Alex replied, a twinge of something like regret in his tone. We sat in our living room, the walls we'd painted together, the furniture we'd picked out during countless trips to the store. It was our home, filled with our memories, our love. And outside, there was a storm brewing, one that threatened to uproot everything we knew. But in that moment, I realized that no matter what happened, we had each other. We were a team about to bring a new life into the world, and that was what mattered. "I love you, Liz," Alex said, pulling me close. "I love you too," I whispered back. The fallout from that night would linger. The scars it left on our family would take time to heal. But as I looked at Alex, at the life we'd built, and the future we were about to embark on, I knew that we'd weather any storm together. And as for Jane, she was a chapter in our lives that we had closed, a story that we wouldn't let define us. From now on, it was just us, our baby, and the road ahead. Whatever it brought, we'd face it together.
It looked terrible, so I threw it away. "I did that for you, I was confused by what was said. Haha. Mark Anderson, my employer, frequently harasses me and my staff. I had put up with it up until now, but this time I couldn't forgive him. Is it true that he tossed away the ugly-looking lunch that my dear wife had made for me? The vegetable-filled one, so pitifully impoverished. Eating such things won't make you stronger. A man ought to consume meat. It was for your own benefit. It's the end of your life," Mark replied. Mark went on without realizing my rage, and I told him icily that it was time to make him understand whose lunch he had thrown away. "Why does the lunch my daughter made in the trash?" I inquired. "Daughter." Just then, a bystander, Chairman Hayes, went pale and came up to us. This aggressive boss's well-earned demise started with this incident, which marked a turning point in his career. "I'm a 27-year-old employee named Jason. Sarah, my wife, is a stay-at-home mom. Last year, Sarah and I got married like any other couple. Sarah, you look cute today." Stop it. Every time I say cute, I can't help but think my wife, who is 3 years younger, is adorable. I think Sarah's hesitant smile is beautiful. I'd rather not go to work. Sarah is the one I want to be with. Jason, you have to go to work, you know. I unintentionally annoy Sarah by saying things like that. I sincerely appreciate how Sarah calms me down and sends me on my way. She made it possible for me to get to work. I made a delicious lunch, so do your best. Every time I whine about not wanting to go to work, Sarah gives me a freshly baked lunch. As always, thank you. I'd accept it and head out, saying, I'll look forward to lunch and do my best. To be honest, my feet hurt as I walked to work, But I do it for Sarah, who was waiting for me to get back. Actually, I was worried about something that I hadn't yet told my wife, Sarah. Go to work if you have time to spout gibberish. You guys are just good at working. The worst environment in the department has been brought about by the recently assigned Mark's harassment and sarcasm. Naturally, he would dump his own work on subordinates. After assigning irrational duties, he would yell, "Too slow. You're finished. Is there nothing you can do correctly?" The staff were experiencing emotional and bodily distress as a result of the constant harassment. Because of Mark's constant shouting, everyone was on edge. Here we were all, growing more and more worn out in such a setting. "Jason, come here. I seem to be the target today." Mark was going to give me an unreasonable reprimand. "Jason, why haven't you prepared the materials for today's meeting?" I was suddenly yelled at by Mark. Taken aback, I asked, "Meeting materials?" What was he talking about? I hadn't received any instructions to prepare such materials. Besides, I hadn't even heard about a meeting today. Being proactive is the basic principle of a working professional. Mark started spouting nonsense. Being proactive. If he thinks so, why couldn't he prepare it himself? How am I supposed to prepare for a meeting I didn't even know existed? "Have the materials ready for the meeting starting at 1:30 p.m., he said. I checked the time. It was around 11 a.m. now. Looks like I would have to skip lunch break to get this work done. Reluctantly, I started working on the materials. This meeting required past documents, so I gathered what I needed and secluded myself in the records room. At 12:30 p.m., during lunch break, I thought I could just make it in time and return to my desk. What? It's gone. Why? But my precious lunch was missing. I searched in my bag, on my desk, and in the surrounding area, but the lunch was nowhere to be found. I definitely received it in the morning and came to work with it, so it couldn't just disappear. "What are you looking around for, Jason?" There was Mark, smirking as he approached me. "Had you finished preparing the documents?" "I've gathered all the necessary materials, so I just need to put them together." Seemingly dissatisfied with my response, Mark clicked his tongue, but soon smirked again. "Looking for something?" "My lunchbox is missing," I answered honestly when he asked. "Oh, that. I threw it away." "What? You threw it away?" I involuntarily raised my voice in disbelief. What did he just say? He threw away my lunch. That pathetic lunch full of vegetables and looking poor. Eating that won't give you any strength. A man should eat meat. "I did it thinking of your well-being," Mark said, smirking as he spoke. I was so angry I felt like I could explode. I could feel my clenched fists trembling. Your life is over, I thought. It was then, as I coldly confronted Mark, that someone interrupted. "Excuse me for a moment." "Oh, Chairman Hayes." Chairman Hayes walked in at that moment, his face ashen, and he was holding a wrapped item in his hand. I recognized the wrapping. It was the wrap for the lunchbox I had brought. "That's my lunchbox. Thank you. Where did you find it?" I asked as I received the lunchbox. It was in the trash can in the hallway. He really threw it away. Upon hearing Chairman Hayes' answer, I looked at Mark. Mark's face turned pale at the arrival of Chairman Hayes, but he tried to cover it up with a forced smile. "Did you, by any chance, throw away Jason's lunch? For what reason?" "Jason always brings his lunch, but it always looks unappetizing, so I was worried. I thought it would be terrible if he fell ill eating such food. It's unfortunate if someone is bad at cooking, but it's better to make a lunch that looks more appealing. It was out of kindness, you see." Mark tried to justify his actions. An appetizing, bad at cooking. Such words reignited the anger I had been trying to suppress. It seemed Chairman Hayes felt the same way. As I was about to speak in anger, Chairman Hayes gestured for me to be quiet and began speaking calmly. "It seems you have a sophisticated hobby of peeking into others' lunches and criticizing them. Chairman Hayes coldly uttered his sarcastic remark. Mark grimaced in response. He always eats it so proudly, it's hard not to notice. I would brag too if my beautiful, lovely, and wonderful wife woke up early in the morning to make me such a lunch. I found myself reflexively responding to Mark's words. That's how much I treasure Sarah. Be quiet, Chairman Hayes said, smiling kindly, signaling me to stop. Yes, sorry. I apologized internally. Then, Chairman Hayes turned his gaze back to Mark. What about Jason's lunch made you think it looked unappetizing? Little meat, mostly vegetables, the rice was brown, and it looked messy. Mark responded disparagingly to Chairman Hayes' inquiry. If Chairman Hayes hadn't been there, I might have punched him. I see. Then let me make something clear. Huh? Clear? Mark looked confused, obviously unaware that he had made an enemy of a significant person. The person who gets up early in the morning to make this lunch with all her effort is my daughter. Jason is my daughter's husband. Why is my daughter's lunch in the trash? Daughter. Mark stood dumbfounded as the truth was revealed. It's Sarah. I'm starting work here from today. Hello. I look forward to working with you. I met my wife, Sarah, when she joined the company as a new employee. She began working without revealing she was the chairman's daughter. I was assigned to be her mentor. Sarah, you're quick to learn. Is that so? Thank you. I took good care of her, not just as a mentor, but as a senior colleague. Sarah was a capable new employee and soon needed little help. Then, one time, Sarah made a mistake at work. This is my fault for not supervising properly. I apologized alongside her and worked hard to rectify the mistake. Eventually, we managed to fix it and celebrated our hard work. Jason, I'm really sorry for this time. It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. As a new employee, just be careful not to repeat this same mistake. When you become a senior, help your juniors if they're in trouble. That's the secret to a successful company, as I was taught by my seniors. Later, I learned that Sarah was impressed by what I said that day. From then on, our relationship grew closer. Sarah, about this copy. Yes, what about it? It looks like you got the front and back mixed up. The paper came out blank. Oh, I'm so sorry. I always thought Sarah, who seemed competent yet somewhat naive and clueless about the world, needed someone to look after her. I found myself instinctively watching over her, ready to help at any moment. Sarah, you should drink more. Hey, seniors, don't just bother the young lady. Pay some attention to me too. At company drinking parties, I would shield Sarah from being pressured to drink too much, sometimes getting drunk myself in the process. Sarah grew fond of me and would report to me whenever something happened. Jason, I found a nice restaurant the other day. Would you like to go with me? If it's Sarah's recommendation, definitely. Our conversations ranged from work to personal matters. Our dinners progressed from a few times a month to once a week. Gradually, our relationship grew closer. Jason and Sarah really make a great couple. They only have eyes for each other. There's no room for anyone else. It's nice to be close, but don't make out at work. Before we knew it, we were an officially recognized couple within the company. Then one day, Chairman Hayes approached me. You're Jason, right? Yes, that's me. I need to talk to you. Come with me. Not understanding what Chairman Hayes wanted to speak with me about, I followed him, worried about what I might have done. Dad? I looked in the direction of the voice and saw Sarah. Dad, what's going on? Do you need something from Jason? Yes, well, it's something that concerns Sarah as well. Come along. That was when I first learned that Sarah was the chairman's only daughter. Sarah is the chairman's daughter. I kept it a secret. I didn't want to be seen as the chairman's daughter. I wanted to work as a regular employee. I'm sorry for hiding it until now. She had apparently gone through the interview process without revealing her identity as the chairman's daughter, and thus she was hired as Sarah and assigned to my department. Indeed, if everyone knew she was the chairman's daughter, they would have treated her differently. I might have also cared for her in a different way. Sarah is an excellent employee who delivers results in her work, regardless of being the chairman's daughter. Really, thank you. Well, she's a bit of a scatterbrain, though. That is, I'm trying to improve, but you didn't have to say that in front of my father. As I shared my honest opinion, Sarah smiled happily. I was drawn to her smile, even as I inadvertently said something extra. It was our usual banter, but this time it wasn't her colleagues who were nearby, but her father. Chairman Hayes, realizing this, looked at me with a stern expression. It's too early for marriage. I won't allow it. I was stunned by Chairman Hayes' words. Indeed, I was aware of my feelings for Sarah, but Sarah and I are not dating. Huh. When they clarified that we weren't even dating yet, Chairman Hayes looked surprised. It turned out that there were rumors at the company that Sarah and I were about to get married, and Chairman Hayes had come to lay down the law after hearing them. In reality, our close interactions had led people to believe the rumors were true, so he had addressed the topic of marriage. But I do think Sarah is a wonderful woman, and I would like to date her. Seizing the opportunity, I declared my intentions to Chairman Hayes and then turned to Sarah. Sarah, will you go out with me? At first, Sarah looked surprised by my proposal. Ha ha ha. I've never seen someone propose in front of their parent before. She laughed. Indeed, Jason, you're too much, Sarah said, bursting into laughter. I couldn't help but join her in laughter. Fine, do as you like. Chairman Hayes finally gave in, seemingly disarmed by his daughter's reaction. Soon after, I received a positive response from Sarah, and we started dating. The fact that we weren't actually dating until then surprised many at the company. You're giving off such a sweet vibe, and you weren't even dating, they would say. When I admitted it was all unconscious, my colleagues teased me mercilessly. After a while, we decided to get married. It's too soon, Chairman Hayes exclaimed. Well, everyone said we were taking too long. Chairman Hayes was the only one opposed. No matter if it's 5 years or 20 years, you're going to say the same thing, right? No matter how many years pass, Dad will always say it's too soon for marriage. If I listen to him every time, I'll never get married. Sarah and her mother brushed him off. Officially, I remember Chairman Hayes looking flustered and isolated. I think Jason is a fine young man, but marriage might still be too soon, he said. If you think he's a good person, then just accept it, Sarah's mother said. If you're going to be so mean, I won't let you hold your grandchild, Sarah added. That's well. There, you two, Chairman Hayes said, clearly flustered. I found myself stepping in to mediate. His wife sure is a strong person. My mother also had a way of keeping my father in check. Is it a case of strong mothers, perhaps? Anyway, after persistently appealing to Chairman Hayes, he finally gave his blessing for our marriage. Half a year later, we had our wedding. If Dad had accepted sooner, we could have been married earlier, Sarah lamented. It just shows how precious you are to him, I replied. The company accepted us before your own father did. I occasionally have drinks with Chairman Hayes in private. It seems that intervening back then worked out in my favor. It's a relief. Women in my family are stronger than me, he commented during a drinking session. This helped me establish a reasonably close relationship with Chairman Hayes. Sorry, Jason, don't worry about it. Take your time learning. Sarah wasn't very skilled at household chores. Having lived at her parents' house all her life, where her mother, a homemaker, did all the household chores, Sarah never had to do them herself. She had only ever helped out a bit, and since I had a long history of living alone, I was actually better at housework. Thank you, but I feel bad leaving everything to Jason. I need to learn quickly, Sarah said. Despite this, Sarah earnestly began learning to manage the household. Even so, her cooking skills didn't improve much. Oh, it turned black again. Well, that's common at the beginning. Don't worry, let's try adjusting the heat a little next time. Thus, she practiced by getting up early to make lunch every morning. The lunch she handed me was the result of her efforts. Indeed, it was mostly vegetables, but the once messy dishes were now neatly arranged, and the once burnt omelette, though slightly crumbled, now looked appetizingly yellow. Sarah is improving day by day with her persistent efforts. Every day, she studies cooking and researches how to make it better. Knowing her efforts, I couldn't forgive Mark for his words. How can you say such things without considering the effort of the person who made it? What are you, some kind of critic? I said. Chairman Hayes also knew of his daughter's efforts in cooking. He mentioned buying her cooking books and recording videos of his wife cooking for her. She did not have any knowledge of housework, and he seemed to feel guilty about it. It was typical of Chairman Hayes to have kept her sheltered, not even letting her handle a knife because it was dangerous. She told me, I've improved, so I want Dad to try it too. I'm really looking forward to eating it, she said, genuinely excited about receiving her lunch. Someday, however, preparing lunch for two was still a burden for Sarah, who was not yet accustomed to cooking. Chairman Hayes himself didn't want to put undue pressure on her. Therefore, once a week, she made an extra portion for her father, which I delivered during my lunch break. Today wasn't one of those days, but he sometimes came by to check on us. He apparently found my lunchbox in the trash on his way here. I didn't know that. Upon hearing our story, Mark started to make excuses. You think just because you didn't know, it's okay to throw away someone's lunch? Chairman Hayes shouted at him. His loud voice drew the attention of everyone around. This is a good opportunity I have. Something to ask. Everyone was seizing the moment with the gathering crowd when Chairman Hayes addressed them. I heard Mark has been harassing Jason, a subordinate. Has anyone else been harassed by him or witnessed it? Speak up. Now's the time. The employees exchanged glances, unsure. I was pushed to do extra work by Mark, one employee said, as if having made up their mind. Following that, other employees also began to speak up, one after another. He made me run errands to the grocery store, and he didn't pay for it. He waged war on me right before leaving. Mark made me cover for his mistakes, one after another. Mark's wrongdoings came to light. Almost everyone there had experienced his harassment. They used the opportunity to voice their complaints to Chairman Hayes. So how will you explain this? Chairman Hayes asked. Mark glared at his subordinates, but he was outmatched, intimidated by their stares. Mark was pressured into silence. I too glared at him. Mark, hand over your work immediately and take a leave of absence. Your punishment will be decided later, Chairman Hayes declared. Mark knelt down on the spot, utterly dumbfounded, hanging his head in defeat. No one approached or spoke to him in that moment. Afterward, he left the scene as if his soul had departed from him. I picked up the lunchbox that had been thrown in the trash. Fortunately, the lunchbox, wrapped in a cloth, wasn't dirty. Relieved, I sat at my desk and opened the lunchbox. Let's eat, I said, and I began to eat. Jason, Chairman Hayes, and the other employees looked at me in surprise. I smiled at everyone. It's fine. I don't want to waste what my wife made because of such nonsense. With that, I continued eating my lunch. Yes, the lunch Sarah had worked hard to make was truly delicious. Ha ha, you really are something. Chairman Hayes watched me with a smile. His smile seemed to spread to the other employees as they too chuckled softly. Welcome home. Sarah greeted me with a smile when I got home. I heard you had a tough day. Well done. You know about it? I was a bit surprised at her remark. Your father called and told me everything. Thank you for eating the lunch, she said. According to Sarah, Chairman Hayes had called her and explained everything about Mark and how I ate the lunch that was once thrown away. He also said, "You married a good man." I was taken aback by those words. Chairman Hayes, a man shy of praise, would never say such things directly to me. That's great. I couldn't hide my joy at receiving such rare praise from my father-in-law. I hope he's starting to recognize me a bit. I placed my hand on Sarah's belly. I need to work hard as a father, too, I muttered to myself. There was a tiny life growing inside Sarah's belly. In fact, we were expecting twins. She had severe morning sickness and was at risk of a miscarriage, so she had quit her job. Mark had been assigned to the company after she had resigned. Now, in this stable period, she wanted to move her body and was actively doing housework. I worry about her, but I also believe it's important not to be overly protective, so I let her do things her way. Thank you, as always, Sarah. I'm the one who should be thanking you. I'm truly grateful to my wife for making lunches every day, especially considering her condition during pregnancy. When I express my gratitude, Sarah responds with a smile. Her cooking skills are still a bit shaky, but they're improving. What happened, Sarah? I think I got the water ratio wrong. The rice is all mushy. We could cook it again, but let's make it into porridge this time. Sometimes she still gets the rice-water ratio wrong. After dinner, we enjoy a quiet, peaceful time together. I wonder how much cuter they will be when they are born, considering how adorable they are now. As I laugh, Sarah laughs too. It's going to be tough, but that also means twice the cuteness and happiness today. Twice the fun and joy too. We talked about various things for our future. I thought it was a very happy time. I believe our future will surely be a happy one. Meanwhile, Mark faced a grim fate after the incident. Mark was judged to be malevolent and demoted to a branch office. That branch was rumored to have a heavy workload, and he had to start new from the bottom. But since he had always dumped his work on his subordinates, he was nearly incompetent himself. He resigned after being mentally weakened by daily scolding from a younger boss and the intense workload. The mistreatment he had meted out to his subordinates came back to haunt him. It was a fitting example of reaping what you sow. Chairman Hayes was determined to prevent Mark from ever facing us again, so I likely never saw him again. Incidentally, I was appointed to fill the now vacant managerial position. If Jason is the boss, we can feel secure. Thank you. I'll do my best. I plan to take lessons from Mark's example and cherish my subordinates. With his departure, the atmosphere in the department improved significantly. Everyone could work more energetically without fear. However, I'm now in a position of responsibility. There is a weight to it, but I can overcome it, thanks to Sarah's lunches, which she prepares while waiting for my return. Sarah, you did so well. We have cute and healthy twins. Time passed, and Sarah safely gave birth to twins. They were a boy and a girl, both incredibly cute. Both sets of grandparents came to celebrate the birth. They were absolutely adorable. My parents complimented how cute the twins were and comforted Sarah. They also advised me to support Sarah firmly. Chairman Hayes was completely enamored with his grandchildren. His wife, while comforting Sarah, had a bittersweet smile on her face. Dad, Sarah seemed a bit overwhelmed by her father's reaction. I smiled, feeling blissful. I'm happy with my family. I'm really glad that these people are my family. Let's name them Nathan and Emily. Yes, let's give them lots of love. Sarah, and I want to show our children the same love our parents showed us. We want to play a lot with them, learn a lot together, and create many memories. We want to shower them with love every day so they can always be happy and smiling. I think that's also a way of showing filial piety. From now on, Sarah, Nathan, Emily, and I will create a family full of laughter. Just like our parents and in-laws showered us with love, we will pour our love into these children. As I say this, Our parents nod with smiles. I can truly feel how happy I am right now. I want to firmly protect this happiness. When I go to work, everyone congratulates me. When I inadvertently show them photos of the kids, everyone says how cute they are. Odd. Don't brag about their cuteness at work. Okay, Jay. Especially since Mark left. You've been bragging about how cute your wife is. I'm sorry about that, I reply with a wry smile. Right, I should restrain myself from now on. With Mark gone, the atmosphere became warm enough to joke around. In this environment, I'll work hard for Sarah and our 2 children. I'm home. Welcome back. Returning home, I'm greeted by the 3 of them. At home, I'm actively involved in childcare. Taking care of twins is indeed twice as hard, but the joy is also double. During the day, both Sarah's mother and my mother often come to help. We're really grateful for their help. That's true, but as a dad, I need to take care of them too. Don't overdo it. You're working hard too. Don't overdo it yourself, Sarah. We chit-chat while changing diapers. As a couple, we need to work together. By the way, our fathers are also helping out a lot. They actively hold and comfort the babies. Moreover, they bring so many things when they visit that we hardly have to buy anything ourselves. Oh, look. More diapers have been bought. Yes, your father brought them with both hands full. I'm truly grateful. Grateful. But it's a bit weird how much they dote on the grandkids. Sarah is still quite strict with her father. I understand the feeling of doting, and maybe I should have a chat with him about it sometime. They really are adorable. Truly, I wonder what kind of adults they'll become. Our beloved children sleep peacefully. Together with Sarah, I gently stroke them. I want to protect them. I truly felt this from the bottom of my heart. Our little ones are still fragile. Their future holds countless possibilities. They might become salarymen like me, or perhaps athletes or doctors. The possibilities for their future are endless. I want to do what's necessary to protect their future. But they're surely going to be kind children because you, Jason, are kind. And if they take after me, they might be a bit clumsy. That's not true. If they're like Sarah, they'll be strong-willed, though maybe a bit absent-minded. Oh, I've gotten much better than before. Sarah laughs at my words, and her smile brightens up. I think about how we should continue to support each other and laugh together as a family.
I guess every story about family drama starts with everything was fine until… Well, my story isn't any different. Everything really was fine until I turned 11. I'm Tasha, and back then, I lived with my parents in a cozy 2-story house. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was home. Mom and Dad seemed happy enough, at least to my kid eyes. The divorce came as a surprise, even though it was peaceful. No screaming, no fighting over furniture, nothing like what my friend Jenny went through when her parents split up. Dad just moved out one day, taking his tools and clothes with him. He hugged me tight and said, "I'll always be here for you, princess." Mom handled it well at first. When Dad's alimony checks came in, she'd roll her eyes and mutter under her breath about how it wasn't enough, but that was about it. I spent weekends with Dad at his small apartment above the auto repair shop he was trying to get off the ground. The place always smelled like motor oil and coffee, but I loved it. Then, about a year after the divorce, Mom met Richard. He had 2 daughters, Sarah and Emma, both a couple years younger than me. When Mom told me about their engagement, her eyes lit up like Christmas lights. "Just think about it, honey," she gushed, holding my hands in hers. "You'll have sisters. We'll be a proper family again. Richard is such a wonderful man, and his girls are so sweet. You'll love having siblings." I remember nodding eagerly, caught up in her excitement. I'd always wanted sisters, and the way Mom described them made it sound like a fairy tale coming true. She spent hours talking about our future life together, painting pictures of family game nights and sister bonding sessions. The wedding was small but nice. I wore a pale blue dress and carried a basket of flowers. Sarah and Emma wore matching pink dresses and kept whispering and giggling together during the ceremony. I tried to catch their eyes, hoping they'd include me in their secret jokes, but they just turned away. When they moved in, I was so excited I could barely sleep the night before. I'd cleaned my room, made space in the bathroom cabinet for their things, and even put together welcome cards for each of them. Mom helped me arrange flowers in their rooms. "See? You're already being such a good sister," she said, kissing my forehead. If only I'd known then what was coming. Maybe I would have fought harder to keep things the way they were. Maybe I would have told Dad how I really felt about Mom remarrying. But I was 11, and I believed in fairy tales about happy blended families. It took exactly 3 days for my fairy tale to turn into a nightmare. On the 4th morning after they moved in, I woke up early as usual to get ready for school. But when I tried to go into the bathroom, the door was locked. "Just a minute," Sarah called out in a sing-song voice. That minute turned into 45. I kept knocking, telling them I needed to get ready for school, but all I heard was giggling and the hairdryer running. When they finally came out, both Sarah and Emma were perfectly groomed, wearing matching outfits. "Beauty takes time," Emma smirked as they passed me. "You should know that." "Oh wait, maybe you don't." I barely had time to brush my teeth before the school bus came. That became our new morning routine, them hogging the bathroom while I waited, usually ending up being late or rushing. But the bathroom was just the beginning. At dinner that night, I went to sit in my usual spot next to Mom, but Sarah had already taken it. When I opened my mouth to protest, Mom cut me off. "Tasha, honey, why don't you sit over there?" She pointed to the chair furthest from her, next to the edge of the table. "It's just a chair, don't make a fuss." I watched as Mom served Sarah and Emma first, cutting their meat into perfect pieces, asking if they wanted more juice, fussing over them like she used to fuss over me. Richard beamed at the scene, while I picked at my food in silence. Things got worse when Sarah spotted my collection of hair accessories, the ones Mom and I had bought together during our weekly shopping trips. "Oh my God, Emma, look at these," Sarah exclaimed, pulling out my favorite butterfly clips. They'd look so much better on us. Those are mine, I said, trying to take them back. Girls should share, Mom said firmly. Tasha, don't be greedy. Sarah and Emma are your sisters now. After that, Sarah and Emma started calling me Greedy Tasha whenever adults weren't listening. But that wasn't enough for them. My textbooks would mysteriously end up with torn pages. My clothes would get accidentally stained with nail polish. My homework would vanish, only to reappear crumpled in the trash. Every time I tried to tell Mom, she'd shake her head disapprovingly. Tasha, stop trying to get attention. I know this adjustment is hard, but making up stories about your sisters isn't the way to handle it. They're not my sisters, I finally snapped one day after finding my favorite sweater with a huge hole in it. That earned me a lecture from both Mom and Richard about family and gratitude. But the final blow came a week later when Mom announced she was reorganizing the bedrooms. Sarah and Emma need more space for their things, she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. Your room has better closets, so they'll take that one. We've already moved your stuff to the small room next to the laundry. The small room was basically a glorified closet with a window. It barely fit my bed and dresser. When I saw all my things crammed into that tiny space, something inside me broke a little. This wasn't just about a room, it was about my place in this family, or rather, my lack of one. Richard wasn't content just letting his daughters torment me, he had to join in too. Any little thing I did wrong became proof that I was a difficult child. If I was quiet, I was sulking. If I spoke up, I was being disruptive. I couldn't win. Just like your father, he'd say, shaking his head whenever I didn't meet his impossible standards. Always causing problems. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? The funny thing was, Dad was actually doing pretty well with his auto repair business. He specialized in luxury cars, and while it was tough at first, he was slowly building a solid reputation. I never told Richard this, though. Let him think what he wanted. My weekends with Dad became my lifeline. We'd order pizza, watch old movies, and he'd tell me stories about the fancy cars he was working on. Sometimes I'd sit in his office while he did paperwork, just enjoying the peaceful atmosphere. How are things at home, Princess? He'd ask occasionally, and I'd always say fine. He had enough on his plate, working long hours to get his business off the ground. The last thing he needed was to worry about me too. The years crawled by. I threw myself into my studies, spending as much time as possible at the library or with friends. Anything to avoid being home. Before I knew it, high school graduation was approaching. I'd applied to several colleges. I got acceptance letters from most of them. I was over the moon, finally, a chance to get away, to start fresh. The day after graduation, I couldn't contain my excitement anymore. We were all sitting at dinner, and I decided to share my news. I got accepted to several colleges, I announced, pulling out the acceptance letters. Even got offered some partial scholarships. I really like the business program at. Richard's laugh cut through my words like a knife. Not a genuine laugh, one of those mocking ones that makes your stomach sink. College? He sneered. And who exactly is going to pay for that? Your loser father? The guy who can barely keep his little garage afloat? I stared at him, the letters suddenly feeling heavy in my hands. I have scholarships, and I can get loans. Don't be ridiculous, he interrupted. We're not co-signing any loans for you. We're saving our money for Sarah and Emma's education. I turned to Mom, desperately hoping she'd stand up for me, defend me, be my mother for once. She just looked down at her plate. Richard's right, honey, she said softly. We need to think about the girl's future. Something inside me snapped. All the hurt, all the rejection, all the years of being pushed aside, it all came pouring out at once. "You haven't paid any attention to me in years," I shouted, pushing back from the table. "All you care about is pleasing your precious husband and his perfect daughters. When's the last time you even asked how I was doing? When's the last time you acted like my mother instead of their stepmother?" The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the sharp crack of skin against skin. It took me a moment to realize what had happened, that my mother, my own mother, had slapped me across the face. My cheek stung, but what hurt more was seeing Sarah and Emma's expressions. They were actually smiling, clearly enjoying the show. Richard sat there with a satisfied smirk, like he'd been waiting for this moment. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat radiating from where her hand had struck. Mom just stood there, her hand still raised, her face a mixture of anger and something else. Shock? I didn't stick around to find out. I ran to my tiny room and started throwing things into my suitcase. Clothes, photos, my few remaining precious possessions that Sarah and Emma hadn't ruined. I could hear movement in the house, but no one came to check on me. No one tried to stop me. No one said they were sorry. I made it about a block before the adrenaline wore off and reality hit me. I was 18, with no money, no plan, and nowhere to go. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Dad. "Hey princess, what's up?" His cheerful voice almost made me break down right there. Can you come get me?" I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "Of course. Where are you?" 15 minutes later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up beside me. For a moment, I thought I'd given him the wrong street. There was no way this was my dad's car. But there he was, grinning through the open window. "Like my new ride?" he asked as he got out to help me with my suitcase. "This is yours?" I stared at him in disbelief. "I thought it was a customer's car." He laughed, that warm, familiar laugh I'd grown up with. "Nope, all mine. Bought it last week. Business has been good." Then he noticed my suitcase, and his expression changed. "Tasha, what's going on? Why are you out here with a suitcase?" The whole story came pouring out, the college acceptances, Richard's mockery, Mom's betrayal, the slap. Dad's face grew darker with each word. By the end, he was gripping the steering wheel so tight, his knuckles were white. "I'm going over there right now," he growled, starting to turn the car around. "No, Dad, please don't," I grabbed his arm. "It's not worth it. I just want to leave." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right. Let's go home." Over lunch at his place, he'd learned to cook pretty decent pasta over the years. Dad dropped another bombshell. "Remember that fleet contract I was bidding on? With the luxury car rental company?" He was trying to act casual, but I could see him practically bouncing with excitement. "Well, I got it. Exclusive maintenance contract for their entire fleet. The business is really taking off." I was genuinely happy for him, but I must have looked a bit dejected thinking about my own situation, because he quickly added, "And you know what else? I've been saving money for years, putting aside whatever I could for your college fund. It's not enough for an Ivy League school, but combined with your scholarships." I nearly choked on my pasta. You've been saving for my college?" He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Of course I have, princess. Did you really think I'd let Richard be right about me?" For the first time that day, I started crying, but these were happy tears. All those years I'd spent protecting Dad from my problems, and here he'd been quietly planning for my future the whole time. I decided to keep my college plans secret from Mom and her perfect family. Let them think they'd won. I spent that summer living with Dad and working at the Sweet Bean Cafe downtown to save up some extra money. Then one afternoon, the bell above the door chimed, and in walked Sarah and Emma, dressed like they were heading to a fashion show instead of a coffee shop. They settled into a booth in my section, of course they did, and smirked as I approached with my notepad. Well, Sarah drawled, loud enough for nearby customers to hear. Looks like someone found their true calling. Emma snickered. Yeah, we just wanted to see how the other half lives, before we head off to college in the fall. Dad's already picked out the perfect schools for us. Can I take your order? I kept my voice professional, fighting back a smile. If they only knew. Oh, you'll probably still be taking orders when we graduate, Sarah continued, examining her manicured nails. But don't worry, maybe we'll leave you nice tips when we visit home from college. I just smiled and wrote down their complicated, half-CAF, extra hot drink orders. Let them have their moment, I knew where I was headed. That fall, I started college in the neighboring state. I threw myself into my business classes, made new friends, and started building a life that had nothing to do with my past. Mom never called to apologize for the slap, or for anything else. I didn't call her either. Dad visited whenever he could, and we talked almost every day. 4 years flew by. I graduated with honors and landed a job at a marketing firm in the same city as my college. Starting salary wasn't huge, but it was enough to rent a small apartment and live comfortably. I worked hard, stayed late, took on extra projects. My bosses noticed. The promotions started coming. First junior manager, then senior manager, then team leader. Each one came with a nice bump in pay. I was able to start saving serious money for the first time in my life. Then one day, Dad showed up at my apartment with a massive grin on his face. His business had expanded to 3 locations, and he'd just signed contracts with 2 more luxury car rental companies. I want you to have this, he said, pulling out a cashier's check. The amount made me dizzy. It's for a down payment on your own place. You've worked so hard, princess. You deserve this. 2 months later, I was moving into my own apartment, not rented, owned. More raises came. More promotions. I started thinking about buying a house, something with a garden maybe, in one of those quiet neighborhoods outside the city. Then one evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. Tasha? The voice was hesitant, familiar in a way that made my stomach clench. It's Mom. I think it's time we talked. I want to try to fix things between us. Okay, I heard myself say. Let's talk. We agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown, neutral territory. When Mom walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, tired, nothing like the confident woman who had chosen her new family over me years ago. You look wonderful, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Her hands were shaking slightly as she arranged her napkin. We made awkward small talk about the weather and my job until the waitress brought our coffee. Then Mom took a deep breath and the real story came out. I left Richard, she said, staring into her cup. Or rather, he left me. After we mortgaged the house to pay for the girls' college. I waited, letting her continue at her own pace. They promised they'd help with the payments once they graduated. She laughed bitterly. But when the time came, they had excuses. Always excuses. The job market was tough, they needed to focus on their careers, they had their own expenses. She wiped her eyes with a trembling hand. We lost the house. All those years of payments, gone. And Richard, he just packed up and moved in with Sarah. Said he couldn't handle the financial stress anymore. Mom, I started, but she held up her hand. Please, let me finish. I was wrong, Tasha. I chose them over you. I let them hurt you. I hurt you. And I am so sorry. The tears in her eyes were real. The tremor in her voice was real. And despite everything, despite all the years of pain and rejection, I found myself reaching across the table to take her hand. I forgive you, I said softly, surprising myself with how much I meant it. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. About Mom, alone and homeless after giving everything to people who had given nothing back. It felt like karma, in a way, but it didn't make me happy. Instead, I felt a strange mix of sadness and opportunity, a chance to be the bigger person. I called her on a Wednesday evening. "I've been thinking about buying a house," I said after we exchanged hellos. "Something in the old neighborhood, with a garden maybe. It would be too big for just me, but maybe you'd like to live there?" I took a week off work and flew home to house hunt. Found a beautiful place just outside town, nothing fancy, but solid and welcoming, with a wraparound porch and mature trees in the yard. Mom cried when she saw it. When Dad heard about my decision, I expected him to be upset. Instead, he surprised me. "You've got a bigger heart than most, Princess," he said, hugging me tight. "I'm proud of you." The next few months fell into a pleasant routine. I'd fly in for weekend visits, spend time with Dad first, then head over to the new house to see Mom. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly but surely. She seemed happier, more like the mom I remembered from childhood. During one visit, I noticed some unfamiliar things in the house: men's boots by the door, a jacket I didn't recognize hanging in the hallway. "Oh, just a friend visiting," Mom said quickly when I asked. "You know how it is." I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe I should have. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was just settling into work when my phone lit up with Aunt Carol's number. "Tasha, honey," she said, her voice hesitant. "There's something you need to know. It's about your mother. Well, Richard's living in the house. Him and his daughters. They moved in months ago." "That's impossible," I said. "I was just there 2 weeks ago." "It was just Mom." "Because she makes them leave before you visit," Aunt Carol said gently. "They clear out every time you're scheduled to come. I found out from Marie next door. She's been watching them come and go for months now." Suddenly, those friends' belongings I'd seen made terrible sense. The boots, the jacket. The way Mom had brushed off my questions. I thanked her, hung up, and booked the first flight home. No warning, no calls to Mom. Just grabbed my laptop, I could work remotely, and headed to the airport. It was Wednesday afternoon when I pulled up to the house in my rental car. Richard's old pickup was in the driveway, the same one he'd had all those years ago. My key turned smoothly in the lock. The scene in the kitchen could have been pulled straight from my teenage years. Mom at the stove, wearing her favorite apron, fussing over a pot of something that smelled like Richard's favorite beef stew. Sarah and Emma at the kitchen table, looking exactly like their old entitled selves, just older. Richard in his usual chair, reading the newspaper. Mom saw me first. The wooden spoon she was holding clattered to the floor. "Tasha," her face went white. "I wasn't expecting you until Saturday." "Clearly," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "What are they doing here?" "We live here now," Sarah announced with a smirk. "Mom invited us." She realized family should stick together. "Family?" I turned to Mom, who was nervously wiping her hands on her apron. "After everything they did to you? After they cost you your house?" "They apologized," Mom said weakly. "They're trying to make things right. Richard's changed, the girls have changed." "Get them out," I cut her off. "Now. This is my house, and I want them gone." "No. Mom straightened up, and I saw that familiar stubborn look cross her face. I love them, and I want them here. Love them? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They drove you into debt. They cost you your house. Have you forgotten how they treated me? How they bullied me every single day? How they destroyed my things, stole my room, made my life hell? That was years ago. Mom waved her hand dismissively. They were just children then. And what about now? I demanded. They used you for college money and abandoned you. Richard left you when things got tough. How can you just forgive that? Because they're family, Mom insisted, her chin lifting stubbornly. They made mistakes, but they're sorry now. Sarah and Emma exchanged smug looks. Richard just sat there with that same self-satisfied smile I remembered from my childhood. Fine, I said, my voice ice cold. Then I'm giving you a choice, Mom. Right now, them or me. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. I watched Mom's face, searching for any sign of the mother I used to know, the one who used to braid my hair and kiss my scraped knees and tell me I could be anything I wanted to be. I choose them, she said finally. We're happy together, Tasha. Why can't you just accept that? Something inside me hardened permanently. You have 2 days to get out of my house. All of you. You can't do this. Mom's voice rose to a shriek. I'm your mother. You can't throw me out. Watch me. I turned and walked out, their voices following me down the driveway. 2 days later, I returned. Nothing had changed. Their cars were still in the driveway, and when I walked in, they were all sitting in the living room like they owned the place. I told you to leave, I said. Mom actually laughed. And I told you, you can't throw me out. I'm your mother. Fine. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Then I'll let the police explain it to you. You wouldn't dare. Richard started to rise from his chair. Hello? Yes, I need assistance removing unauthorized occupants from my property. I stated my address clearly, maintaining eye contact with Mom the whole time. What followed was ugly. The police arrived within minutes. Mom screamed and cried as the officers explained that yes, I could evict them, and no, she had no legal right to stay. Richard turned purple with rage, calling me every name he could think of. Sarah and Emma joined in, their true colors showing through their designer clothes and fake smiles. You ungrateful bitch, Mom shrieked as the police escorted them out. After everything I've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I watched them load their belongings into their cars. Name one thing, Mom. Just one thing you've done for me since the day you married him. She had no answer for that. Aunt Carol keeps me updated, though I never ask. They're living in a small apartment across town, struggling to make rent. Richard still can't hold down a job. Sarah and Emma never visit, too busy with their own lives to care about the mother who sacrificed everything for them. Sometimes Mom calls late at night, but I never answer. The house sits empty most of the time. I'm thinking about selling it, maybe buying something closer to the city where I live now. Something smaller, cozier. Something that doesn't hold any echoes of the past.
That's really disappointing. From that day on, helping Emily with her work after my night shift became a daily routine. The reason this was happening was because Emily, in her incredibly roundabout way, said, I don't like you, Alex, but if you want to help, I'll let you. That's when she asked me for help. At first, she only trusted me with simple tasks like fetching documents or making copies. But since I actually have an IQ of 180, I quickly mastered anything she taught me. When Emily realized this, she stared at me in disbelief. So, I asked curiously, is something wrong? Nothing at all, she replied, clearly flustered, turning away with her usual huff. What's going on? Please don't turn away like that. It makes me sad. By the 5th day of her overtime, we finally finished the work. That night, Emily, relieved, stretched her arms wide and said with a bright smile, "Finally done." I also praised Emily for her hard work with a good job, but honestly, I felt a bit disappointed that our time alone together was coming to an end. All right, let's go grab a drink. The place Emily chose was surprisingly a casual pub joint. The place was buzzing with the voices of already tipsy customers, so loud that it drowned out the background music. Emily and I sat side by side at the counter. As she wiped her hands with a damp towel, she asked, "Beer okay with you?" I was thirsty, so I readily agreed. Emily turned to the bartender and called out, "3 beers, please." Huh, didn't you just say 3? Is someone else joining us? Worried that our alone time might be interrupted, I must have made a funny face because Emily, flipping through the skewer menu, laughed and said, "I like to start with 2 beers at once." Surprised you, didn't I? Realizing no one else was coming, I did a little happy dance in my mind. When the 3 beers arrived, we toasted and congratulated ourselves on getting through the week. Emily downed her first beer quickly, finishing it in no time. While sipping her second, she said, "Tonight's on me, so don't hold back. Drink up." I noticed her second glass was already half empty. Despite being so beautiful, her ability to drink like a man was truly impressive. That contrast was oddly appealing. Is this what people mean when they talk about the charm of contradictions? After a few beers, I started looking over the drink menu, thinking about ordering some wine. Beside me, Emily, who was nibbling on the endless supply of edamame, suddenly began to speak. "I don't like you, but I hate Mr. Walker's son John even more." Realizing she was starting to rant, I nodded and encouraged her, "Yeah, and then." Without even glancing my way, she continued talking as if to herself. "He's always dumping impossible tasks on me. Do this, do that. What's this? How did you do that? Explain this. I'm not his personal secretary. I've got my own work to do. Why can't he handle his own stuff? Is he a baby? Is that why he's always clinging to me?" "Clinging to you?" When I blurted out in surprise, Emily turned toward me and said, "Oh, I didn't realize you were there," before continuing her story. "Yeah, you're still here. Huh. I don't know if it's because he's been to the States or what, but he's always in my personal space. Like, who hugs someone when they first meet? You don't, right? He's always touchy-feely, acting all Western. It's unbearable. This is Japan, for crying out loud. A kiss on the cheek as a greeting? No way." I pushed him away just in time. "Good job, me." As if fueled by her memories, Emily stabbed her chopsticks into a piece of courage in front of her. Clearly frustrated, she munched on the fried chicken, grumbling, "He really pisses me off." I couldn't help but notice how different her impression of John was from what Carol had told me before. I was drinking wine, and when Emily was drinking whiskey with hot water, she looked curious and asked me what I was thinking. "So, why are you working as a janitor? You were so smart, always top of the class. It seems like such a waste." Expecting some grand reason, she seemed disappointed when I explained the simple truth. "Well, as you know, I had to drop out of high school when I couldn't afford the tuition. So my highest level of education is middle school. Nowadays, the only places that'll hire someone with that background are part-time jobs or manual labor. I was lucky to find this cleaning company that didn't care about my education. So here I am in this industry. A young guy with physical strength is in high demand." Emily's face twisted with frustration at my straightforward answer, and she loudly exclaimed, "Ah, that's so annoying." Exhausted from all the overtime, Emily slumped over the counter, nearly falling asleep right then and there. A college-age waiter approached us, looking apologetic. "Sorry, but we're about to close. Emily had already taken care of the bill before she got too drunk, but the real issue was her. I tried to wake her by gently shaking her shoulder. She briefly lifted her head, gave a lazy smile, and then slumped back down on the table. How was I going to get her home? In the end, I caved under the silent pressure from the waiter, who clearly wanted us to leave. So, I hoisted Emily onto my back and carried her out of the restaurant. As we stepped outside into the cool night air, she began to stir on my back. Thinking she might be waking up, I called out to her, but there was no response. Realizing she was still asleep, I started walking toward the main street, hoping to catch a cab. Suddenly, Emily, in a much softer and more affectionate voice than usual, began to mumble something. I say I don't like you, Alex, but the truth is, I don't dislike you at all. Actually, I really like you, but I'm too embarrassed to say it, so I won't. So, you'd better not tell Alex. Okay. Hearing those words, I instinctively tightened my grip on the back of Emily's knees. At the same time, the realization that I was carrying her on my back hit me again, and my heart started pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Did she just say she likes me? I don't know how long I stood there like that. Suddenly, Emily, now more awake, began to squirm on my back and lightly punched my shoulder. "Hey, put me down," she demanded in her usual tone. So I quickly set her down. She seemed a bit embarrassed, perhaps realizing she'd been carried on my back. "I can't believe this. Thank God I wasn't wearing a skirt," she muttered, clearly flustered, her ears turning bright red. Despite her complaints, I couldn't help but be struck by how unexpectedly cute she was, so different from her usual tough demeanor, and my heart wouldn't stop racing. We walked to the main street, but no taxis were in sight. As we stood there waiting, Emily suddenly suggested something outrageous. "If we can't get a taxi, maybe I could crash at your place, Alex." What? Unfortunately, a taxi pulled up right then. Reluctant to let her go, I instinctively grabbed Emily's arm as she was about to get in. She turned to me with a shy smile and said, "Too bad. Maybe next time," before getting in the cab and heading home. After that, whenever we ran into each other at work, we started talking more. "Hey Emily, looks like you're not doing overtime anymore. How's work? Getting used to it?" "Hey Alex. Yeah, I'm getting the hang of it, but sometimes I still hit a wall. Could I ask for your advice again sometime?" Since then, she's been coming to me for advice, and though I wasn't sure if my input was really helpful, I have to admit it felt great to be needed by someone I liked. I tried hard not to let it show, but I couldn't help grinning as I said, "Of course, feel free to ask any time. Sometimes an outsider's perspective can be valuable." I tried to play it cool, but inside I was over the moon. Unaware of my feelings, Emily smiled warmly and said, "It's great to have a reliable classmate like you. See you later," before walking off. As I stood there trying to contain my excitement, Carol, who had been watching us while wiping down a nearby plant, spoke up. "That girl's really changed since the beginning, hasn't she? She's nothing like the others here. Seems like a good kid." Hearing Carol praise the girl I liked made me feel a strange sense of pride. Right? She's really a great person. She even talks to someone like me without any pretense. I must have been showing my feelings more than I thought, because Carol gave me a knowing grin and said, "Oh my. You've really got it bad for that girl. But listen, with someone that beautiful and kind, if you don't step up, some other guy's going to snatch her away in no time. So you better go for it." Carol playfully smacked my back hard. Ouch. That really hurt. But yeah, you're right. I've got to get my act together. One day, I ran into Emily at work, and we were chatting like usual when a male employee walked by and deliberately dropped some trash right in front of me. I had a bad feeling as I looked up at the guy. He was wearing a sharp, tailored suit and had a smug grin on his tan face. He crossed his arms and said just one word, "Pick it up." As I was thinking, who the hell is this guy? Emily suddenly turned pale and shouted at him, John, what are you doing? John? Oh, so this is John, Mr. Walker's son. Emily, stay out of this. People like him get up when you're too nice. Now hurry up and pick it up. Stop it. That's awful. Alex, you don't have to pick it up, Emily insisted. It's fine. It's my job, I said, bending down to pick up the trash. John looked down at me with disdain and said, Guys like you, janitors, will never be on the same level as us. Emily, you're smart, so don't hang around someone this low. It'll just make you look bad, too. And don't defend another guy in front of your boyfriend. It's disrespectful. Boyfriend? I was shocked by this revelation, while Emily desperately tried to explain, No, we're not dating. But at that moment, I didn't know what to believe anymore. John sneered, Come on, Emily, and forcibly pulled her close by the shoulder, leading her away despite her protests. As I knelt there picking up the remaining trash, I noticed several pairs of shoes in my peripheral vision. I looked up to see John's entourage surrounding me, looking down with smug expressions. Did that janitor seriously think he had a chance? No way. That's ridiculous. How delusional can you get? Totally shameless. Did he really think he could date Emily? She's got a high-class boyfriend like John. The usual elite crowd was talking loud enough for me to hear, but I couldn't care less. All I could do was watch Emily, who kept glancing back at me with a troubled expression as she was pulled away. I felt utterly pathetic, but more than anything, I was devastated by the fact that Emily and John were dating. Sigh. I lost count of how many times I sighed that day. I couldn't get Emily and John out of my head. I was so distracted that I wasn't making any progress with my work. Noticing this, Carol came over and said, Alex, you okay? I'll handle this room. Why don't you go take care of the reception area? Come on, off you go. She practically shoved me out of the room, leaving me no choice but to head to the reception area. But as I was leaving, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. There was John, standing next to Emily with his arm around her waist, leaning in close as he talked to her. Carol, who had been pushing me from behind, noticed I'd suddenly stopped and asked, What's wrong? But I couldn't say anything. Following my gaze, Carol saw what I was looking at and said sadly, I'm sorry, Alex. I was trying to get you away from here, so you wouldn't have to see that. That afternoon, I continued cleaning with a heavy heart. What was I even hoping for? John was right. Emily and I lived in completely different worlds. When did I start thinking I might actually have a chance with her? As I sighed for the umpteenth time, I saw Carol running down the hallway, looking flustered. Alex, something's wrong. That pretty girl. What's her name again? Emily? Yes, Emily. She's in trouble. According to Carol, she had been cleaning in the hallway near the meeting room as usual while keeping an ear out for the latest gossip. Suddenly, the noise inside the room grew louder, as if a commotion was starting. Soon, the commotion escalated into a heated argument. Sensing that something noteworthy was happening, Carol decided to listen more closely at the door. To her surprise, she heard Emily's voice from inside the room. It seemed like she was being scolded for a serious mistake, which is why Carol rushed to find me. I thanked Carol for telling me and hurried toward the meeting room. But as I stood outside the door, I realized something. I'm not even an employee of this company. I'm an outsider. If I barged in there, they'd probably just see me as some weirdo and throw me out. Thinking it wouldn't be wise to rush in, I decided to wait for the right moment to step in. As I listened in on the conversation from outside the meeting room, I realized John was trying to pin his mistake on Emily. I'm not at fault, right? I told you to calculate using data from the past 10 years, didn't I? That's not true. You told me that using last year's data would be sufficient. I have the email you sent with those instructions right here, Emily responded, showing him the email. But John wasn't backing down. I told you later to use the 10-year data. This is why you're useless, Emily. Hanging around that worthless janitor must be making you dumber. His manipulation was met with snickers from the others in the room. John then turned to the room and continued, I apologize for the inconvenience caused by my incompetent subordinate. We'll have someone else recalculate the numbers, and we can move on to the next proposal. He was about to carry on with the meeting when I could no longer stand by and open the door. The room fell silent as everyone turned to see a janitor, an obvious outsider, suddenly step in. Someone quickly dismissed me, thinking I was just there to clean. We're busy right now, so can you clean later? I can handle the calculations, I said, addressing the room full of elite employees and business partners. Everyone stared at me, mouths agape. Get out of here, outsider. Who does this guy think he is? Throw him out. This is a meeting. You can't just barge in. Someone called security, and the room erupted in shouts, some mocking, others angry, while the business partners looked bewildered. John sneered at me, utterly condescending. This isn't your place, janitor. Get out. The exit is over there. He pointed to the door with a smug look as his entourage of the lates burst into laughter at his words. Go ahead and get back to cleaning. Hey, I spilled my tea here because of you. Mind wiping it up? They taunted. Ignoring them, Emily walked over to me with some documents. She handed me the papers and quickly explained what needed to be done. Emily then took the revised numbers I gave her and said, Here is the corrected data, projecting the updated figures for everyone to see. John immediately objected. What? Are you kidding me? This is completely fabricated. It's not fabricated. These calculations are accurate, Emily fired back. There's no way you could have recalculated all this in such a short time. Well, we did. Do you even know who Alex is? He's a genius who won the national math competition hosted by a top university. He's not like the rest of us. I never beat him in grades, not even once in high school. Emily's voice rang with pride as she spoke about me. As I listened, memories of my past came flooding back. I had always been a bright child, excelling in everything. My IQ was tested at 180, and I was often called a prodigy. During elementary school, I was good at every subject, but math was my true strength. My mother once told me that when I was in kindergarten, I could solve problems from high school entrance exams. When it came time for high school, I planned to attend a prestigious public school on a scholarship, given our financial situation, just my mother and me. But after winning a math competition, I received a scholarship to attend a private school known for its elite status. They offered me a full tuition waiver, and I accepted. I lived up to the school's expectations by winning the math competition. However, the victory led to a whirlwind of events. Banquets hosted by school alumni and local dignitaries, constant media interviews prying into my personal life. I was sick of it all. Alex, your mom raised you on her own, didn't she? Yes, that's right. Your dad's never been around. I don't have a father. Have you ever met him? Any memories of him? Why is that relevant? My father has nothing to do with this award. I hated how every interview seemed to date into why my mother was a single parent, how my father left after an affair, and other painful details. It made me despise the reporters. But the worst part was that I was losing time to study math, the subject I loved, because the school kept scheduling interviews and social events without my consent. It stressed me out so much that I began canceling and refusing the school's demands. One day, I was summoned to the principal's office by Dr. Harris. I reluctantly went, expecting another interview. But instead, Dr. Harris told me bluntly, You know, Alex, we admitted you to this school to showcase the mathematical genius we have here, right? Yeah, I get that. Your role at this school is to promote us as a leading institution in mathematics. In other words, you're our school's poster boy. But that's not what I signed up for. The deal was that I just had to win the math competition. What are you talking about? It doesn't end with just winning the competition. Lately, you've been turning down interviews and skipping the social events, haven't you? That's because I asked them to stop invading my privacy. Enough. If this continues, we'll revoke your tuition waiver. If you want to stay at the school, you'll have to pay the same tuition as the other students. That's a problem. We can't afford that kind of money. Since we were never wealthy, there was no way my family could pay the private school's tuition. In the end, I had to drop out. With no motivation left, I didn't enroll in any other high school and just worked part-time jobs, which is why I only have a middle school education. Back in the meeting room, someone quickly checked the calculations on a computer. A surprised voice announced, "These numbers are correct." "It seems the janitor's calculations were accurate," said David, a client, letting out a heavy sigh. Jan, furious, snapped, "So what if the calculations are right? What you did is still obstruction. Remember that, you piece of trash." I fixed John with a steely gaze and replied, "Yes, I understand. I'm not here to show off my math skills. I'm here because I couldn't stand to see Emily being unfairly blamed. Isn't it a manager's job to protect their team? Instead, you shifted the blame onto her to save yourself. That's why I felt compelled to speak up." "What? Yes, I'm just a janitor, but I take pride in my work. I believe everyone here does too. But there's nothing more humiliating than having that pride trampled by your own superior." I found myself reflecting on my past, the bitterness of having my future crushed by the selfish pressures of those in power. My fists clenched tightly with the memory of that frustration. It was David who broke the tense silence. "Indeed, he's right, John. I'm sorry, but we'll have to continue this discussion another time." With that, David declared the meeting over and stood up to leave. The room buzzed with murmurs. JN was apologizing repeatedly to David, trying to make amends. I watched this unfold, feeling detached, until Emily walked over, took my hand, and said, "Thank you, Alex. You were amazing." Her words made my face flush red, but before I could respond, another person suddenly grabbed my hand, startling me. "Wow, you're incredible. I could tell you were no ordinary guy just by watching you do those calculations earlier. I've never met a math competition winner in person before. You really are a genius." The excited man was one of the clients who had been serious during the meeting. I was caught off guard by his enthusiasm, but realized who he was, feeling embarrassed. I reluctantly agreed to take a photo with him on his phone. What just happened? As exhaustion washed over me, Emily, her cheeks flushed, said, "I'd like to thank you for today. Are you free tonight?" That evening, Emily took me to a stylish bar with a stunning view of the city lights. Feeling completely out of place, I was nervous, which made Emily laugh. We were seated at a cozy two-person sofa by the window, and I was mesmerized by the dazzling night view. Emily smiled warmly at me, her beauty making my heart race even more. "Since we're in such a lovely setting, let's order drinks that suit the atmosphere," she said, choosing a cocktail for me. I ended up with a martini, while Emily ordered a Manhattan. As we slowly sipped our delicious cocktails and enjoyed the view, Emily began to speak. "You know, I used to dislike you, Alex." "What?" Emily chuckled mischievously and continued, her gaze growing distant. Emily came from a well-known family and was raised as a model student with excellent grades and impeccable manners. She had an older brother and sister, both of whom graduated from prestigious universities. Her brother worked for a listed company, and her sister was stationed abroad with a multinational corporation. Growing up in such a family, she was under constant pressure to excel academically and maintain her reputation. While she struggled to stay at the top, she couldn't help but envy and resent me for being naturally gifted and able to maintain a scholarship without any apparent effort. One day, something happened that made her dislike me even more. That day, Emily couldn't finish a math assignment during class, so she stayed behind after school to work on it alone in the classroom. That's when I approached her and offered, "Need some help," in what she perceived as a condescending tone, which made her so angry that she ignored me. Wait, that scene isn't that when I tried to talk to you and you ignored me? Was it really because of that? Did I really come off as arrogant? But soon after, when I dropped out of school, Emily realized something important. Everyone carries wounds that others can't see. And then, slowly, she continued, "Even though you had your own pain, Alex, I only saw what was on the surface. After you left, I realized I had admired you all along, but by then, it was too late, and I never saw you again." Hearing Emily's unexpected confession from years ago, I decided to be honest about my own feelings. I've always liked you, Emily, back then and of course, even now. I had admired how hard you worked, and I still do. Emily's eyes widened as she stared at me, her words coming out in a fluster. "I don't like you at all, Alex. Not even a little. You're just someone who's a bit better at math than others and has a big brain. And what's with you being so tall? What did you eat to grow that much? And don't think you can get away with being good-looking just because some of the women at work are fawning over you. Doesn't mean you should get all smug. I hate how you're so nice to everyone. You should only talk to me, not other people. I hate you, Alex. I really do." As she rambled on about all the things she supposedly hated about me, her eyes started to well up with tears. "Oh man, this is way too cute," I couldn't help but say aloud. "Hey, it sounds like you really like me, doesn't it?" Emily's face turned bright red, and tears began to spill from her beautiful eyes. Unable to hold back any longer, she finally admitted, "I like you a lot," through her tears. After that, the business deal was called off entirely. John was held responsible and was reassigned to a remote location. Despite his tearful pleas to his father, Mr. Walker, even his own father was disappointed, reportedly saying he never realized his son was such a fool. As for me, I took responsibility for the destruction I caused during the meeting and resigned from the cleaning company. Parting ways with Carol, who had treated me like a son, was difficult. "Carol, thank you for everything. You've been so good to me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. With tears in her eyes, Carol patted my shoulder hard as usual and said, "You can always come back. But honestly, Alex, you shouldn't. You're destined for greater things. Don't end up here. Go out there and make the most of your talents." Her words brought tears to my eyes as well, but I steeled myself, slapping my cheeks to get my focus back. "All right, time to get going. So what am I going to do now that I've lost my job as a janitor?" Well, it turns out that the client from that meeting was from a pretty big company. Impressed by my abilities, they offered me a job, saying, "We don't care about your academic background. We need your talent." It was basically a headhunting offer. Emily also decided to leave her job due to the stress of working with John and her concerns about the company's future. She joined the same company as me. Now, Emily and I work together, rivals at work, but partners in life, helping the company grow and expand its business. So, Emily, have you thought about our future? What, like what we're having for dinner tonight? No, I mean our future, as in us, our future. Well, looks like someone started thinking seriously about that. Alex, I'm seriously considering marriage. With Emily, but I have no idea what she thinks about it. This is one problem that can't be solved with an equation, so I'm thinking about asking Carol for advice. She's got a lot of life experience, and I could really use her help to give me the push I need when it comes to Emily. And with that, my story comes to an end. Although I ended up dropping out of school and spent years with my life on hold, reuniting with Emily set everything back in motion. I've proven that even without a formal education, talent and ability can still be recognized. I don't know what challenges lie ahead, but with a trustworthy partner by my side, I'm ready to face whatever comes our way.
My name is Kelly, and the story starts in a busy home full of affection, albeit not always equally shared. Our house was always filled with crying, laughter, and the sound of tiny feet. As the second oldest, I was surrounded by my younger sisters, Emma and Lily, who joined our family while I was already in my early teens, and my brother Jake, who was only a year my senior. I was taught the art of responsibility at a young age. I spent a lot of time in our tiny kitchen, helping Mom make dinner or cuddling with a cranky Emma or Lily in the living room, while other kids my age were outside having fun. Even while it wasn't always simple, I learned a lot about hard work and compassion from it. John and Sarah, our parents, were industrious people who aspired to provide us with a better life than they had. Mom balanced 2 part-time jobs and domestic responsibilities, while Dad put in long hours at the nearby factory. They weren't wealthy by any means, but they were able to provide us with a home over our heads and food on the table. But I couldn't help but notice a subtle undercurrent in our family dynamics. My older brother Jake appeared to be very special to our parents. Dad used to exclaim, "Jake's the oldest," and throw his hair in an adorable way. He's carrying on the family name. That comes with responsibilities and perks. The gap was increasingly noticeable as we got older. When it came time for me to graduate from high school, I received an emotional card and a promise that they would help with college bills, while Jake received a car. It wasn't that I wasn't loved. On the contrary, it was only that there was a distinct preference that subtly altered our family relations. Emma and Lily, my sisters, looked up to me with admiring eyes. Since I was so much younger, they frequently viewed me as a surrogate mother. I was determined to be the kind of role model they needed. Therefore, I took this duty seriously. With high school coming to an end, I started thinking about college. As promised, my parents had saved money for our schooling. It was a start, but it wasn't enough to cover everything. I decided to major in finance because I thought it would be a useful area and lead to a secure job. My topic of study turned out to be just as difficult as I had expected. My new routine was late hours spent in the library, but I approached every job with the same tenacity I'd used to assist Mom with housework. I still made sure to contact home on a regular basis despite my burden. Dad would stutter his greetings, Mom would share family rumors with me, and my sisters would argue while talking on the phone about their days. Jake's updates came in less often and were mostly sent through Mom. He had begun working at a nearby company and had shown no desire to pursue higher education. Dad in particular looked happy with his development, as were our parents. Dad used to say, "Your brother's really finding his feet in the business world," when we would talk rarely. "He's got a knack for it." I would mutely concur while smothering every tiny competitive ember that tried to surface. I told myself that this was not a race, that we all had our own routes to take. I devoted myself fully to my education and part-time work as the years went by, wanting to take advantage of every chance my parents had given me. Though it did not cover everything, their financial assistance was a lifesaver for which I was incredibly appreciative. I was resolved not to disappoint them since I understood the efforts they were making to keep me in school. Day of graduation came and went so quickly. With my graduation in hand, I stood in my cap and gown and looked around for my family. They were there too. Jake had made it, standing a little apart and grinning half the time, Emma and Lily waving wildly, Mom and Dad beaming with delight. My mother gave me a big hug after the wedding. "We're incredibly proud of you, my dear," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. Dad gave me a clumsy but loving shoulder pat after nodding. "You did a great job, Kelly. It is now your moment to leave your mark on the world." I told everyone about my ambitions to start my profession and stay in the city while we celebrated over supper. Although there was a part of me that wanted to go back home, the chances here were too good to ignore. I worked long hours at a financial institution in my entry-level role. The frequency of trips home decreased to only big holidays and the odd long weekend. But I never lost sight of my origins. I continued to call and give my sisters care gifts. Almost 10 years after I had initially departed for college, on one of my few trips home, everything changed. My phone rang while Mom and I were catching up over coffee in the kitchen. My supervisor was there. "Kelly, I have some news," he continued, sounding remarkably grave within. "I want you to lead our new branch that we're opening in your hometown. It's a significant promotion, however moving would be required. Do you find it intriguing?" "Yes," I heard myself say. "I'm definitely interested." When I got the job offer back in my hometown, my company said they'd pay for an apartment, but Mom and Dad insisted I move back home. "Come on, Kelly," Mom pleaded. "It'll be just like old times." I couldn't say no. On my first day back, I walked into our old house. It looked smaller than I remembered. Emma and Lily, now in their late teens, ran to hug me. Jake lived separately and was already engaged. Later that night, after unpacking, I sat with Emma and Lily in our old room. It felt good to be back, listening to their stories and laughing together. "So, tell me about Jake's fiancée," I said. Emma and Lily shared a look. "Her name's Vanessa," Emma said slowly. "She's different." Lily nodded. "Yeah, she's from a rich family. Her dad owns the company Jake works for now." Something in their tone made me curious. "Different how?" They didn't say much more, just shrugged and changed the subject. I decided to drop it for now. The next few weeks were busy. I started my new job, setting up the branch office. It was hard work, but I loved it. In the evenings, I'd help Emma and Lily with homework or chat with Mom while she cooked dinner. One Sunday, we were all sitting around the table when the doorbell rang. Mom jumped up to answer it. "It's Jake and Vanessa," she called out. I stood up, eager to see my brother and meet his fiancée. Jake walked in first, looking sharp in a suit. Behind him was a tall, slim woman with perfect hair and clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Vanessa looked around our house like it was beneath her. "Oh, how quaint," she said, picking up one of Mom's knickknacks. I watched, confused, as Mom and Dad fussed over her. They kept asking if she needed anything, apologizing for the smallest things. Emma and Lily were quiet, eyes down. When Vanessa made a nasty comment about Lily's clothes, I'd had enough. I pulled Emma aside. "What's going on?" I whispered. "Why is everyone letting her act like this?" Emma sighed. "Jake works for her dad now. It's a big deal. Mom and Dad are scared if we upset her. Jake might lose his job." I was shocked. This wasn't the family I knew. We'd never let anyone treat us like this before. Things got worse at dinner. Vanessa started on me, making snide remarks about my job and clothes. I saw red. "Look," I snapped. "I don't know who you think you are, but in this house we treat each other with respect. If you can't do that, maybe you should leave." The room went silent. Vanessa's face turned ugly. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and stormed out. Jake followed, looking torn. As soon as they left, Mom and Dad rounded on me. "Kelly, how could you?" Mom cried. "You know how important this is for Jake." Dad looked disappointed. "You need to control your temper. This could ruin everything for your brother." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They kept at it, begging me to apologize, to be the bigger person. Finally, just to shut them up, I agreed to try and make peace with Vanessa. The weeks flew by, and suddenly, Jake's wedding was all anyone could talk about. Vanessa took charge, bossing everyone around like she was running a military operation instead of planning a party. She dragged us to endless dress fittings, insisting we buy expensive gowns that matched the venue's aesthetic. When I suggested something more affordable, Vanessa just laughed. "Oh, Kelly," she sneered. "We can't have you looking cheap at my wedding, can we?" The bachelorette party was next on her list. Vanessa handed out a minute-by-minute schedule, complete with mandatory activities and outfit changes. It was ridiculous, but Mom kept giving me these pleading looks, so I bit my tongue. Then came the bombshell. Vanessa wanted us to dance at the wedding, not just a simple waltz, mind you. No, she was planning a full-on performance. "It'll be the highlight of the reception," she gushed. "You'll all look so cute." My stomach dropped. I'd hurt my back years ago in a car accident. Dancing wasn't really my thing anymore. But I figured, how bad could it be? Turns out, pretty bad. I showed up at the dance studio, and the choreographer started talking about splits and lifts and all sorts of crazy moves. Vanessa was there, barking orders like a drill sergeant. "Come on, ladies, put your backs into it." I pulled out my phone, thinking I'd record it to practice later, but as I watched, I realized there was no way I could do this. It was way too much. "Hold on," I said. "This is insane. We're not circus performers, Vanessa. I can't do these moves." Vanessa's face turned ugly. "What do you mean you can't? Of course you can. Stop being difficult, Kelly." I stood my ground. "No, I mean it. I have an old back injury. This kind of dancing isn't possible for me." That's when Vanessa really lost it. She started yelling, throwing around words I won't repeat. Then she hit me with this. "Fine. If you won't dance, you owe Jake $3,500 as a wedding gift. It's only fair since you're ruining my special day." I was speechless. I looked at Emma and Lily, hoping they'd back me up, but they just stared at the floor, Mom's warnings clearly ringing in their ears. That was it. I'd had enough. "You know what, Vanessa? Keep your damn dance. I'm out of here." I stormed out of the studio, my hands shaking as I clutched my phone. The video of that disastrous rehearsal was still recording as I walked home, my mind racing. What was I going to do now? How had things gotten this messed up? I burst through the front door, still fuming from the dance rehearsal fiasco. Mom and Dad were in the living room, and they could tell something was wrong. I spilled everything. The impossible dance routine, Vanessa's outrageous behavior, the $3,500 ultimatum. I expected sympathy, maybe even anger on my behalf. What I got was something else entirely. Dad's face turned red. "Kelly, how could you? After everything we've talked about, this wedding is so important for Jake's future. You need to apologize to Vanessa right now and agree to do the dance." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Apologize for what? Having a spine injury? Standing up for myself? "Stop being so selfish," Dad shouted. "This isn't about you. It's about Jake's happiness and success." "So my happiness doesn't matter?" I shot back. "My health?" The argument escalated quickly. Voices were raised, tears were shed. I stood my ground, refusing to capitulate to Vanessa's ridiculous demands. That's when Dad dropped the bomb. "If you can't support your brother and his fiancée, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all." The room went silent. I packed a bag that night, ignoring Mom's half-hearted attempts to smooth things over. The next day, I moved into the apartment my company had originally offered. It was small and empty, but at least it was mine. The wedding came and went. I didn't attend. I couldn't bear the thought of watching my family bow down to Vanessa's every whim. I spent that day alone in my apartment, alternating between anger and sadness. A few days later, my phone exploded with notifications. Vanessa had made a post on social media, a dramatic tale about how I had tried to ruin her perfect day. She painted herself as the victim and me as the jealous, spiteful sister-in-law. The comments were worse. Relatives I hadn't seen in years were suddenly experts on my character, condemning me for my selfish and cruel behavior. Even Emma and Lily liked the post, a betrayal that cut deep. The call started soon after. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all wanting to tell me how disappointed they were, how I should be ashamed of myself. Emma tried to reach out once, sent a text saying she missed me, but when I suggested meeting up, she backpedaled, Said Vanessa wouldn't like it. I didn't try again after that. I threw myself into my work, hoping to finish the project quickly and leave this town behind. But things kept getting delayed, problems cropping up that required my personal attention. Each extension felt like a twist of the knife. Months passed, and I settled into a lonely routine: work, home, sleep, repeat. I'd almost gotten used to the silence when my phone rang one night. It was Lily. "Kelly," her voice was small, trembling. "Can we talk?" We met at a cafe across town, away from prying eyes. Lily looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair a mess. She burst into tears the moment she saw me. "I'm so sorry, Kelly," she sobbed. "You were right about everything." Slowly, the whole story came out. After the wedding, Vanessa had shown her true colors. She'd been ordering Emma and Lily around like servants, making them clean her house, cook meals, do laundry, all without pay. "She says it's our duty as family," Lily said bitterly. "And Jake? He just goes along with it. He sees how she treats us and does nothing." My blood boiled. "What about Mom and Dad? Surely they don't approve." Lily's laugh was hollow. "They think it's great. Say we're building character and cementing family bonds. It's like they're brainwashed or something." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was worse than I'd imagined. "I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you before," Lily whispered. I was scared. We all were. But now I can't take it anymore. Please, Kelly, help us. The next day, I marched over to our parents' house. Mom answered the door, her smile fading when she saw me. "Kelly, what are you doing here?" I pushed past her into the living room. Dad was there, looking up from his newspaper with a frown. "We need to talk," I said, "about Vanessa, about how she's treating Emma and Lily." Mom's face hardened. "I don't know what Lily's been telling you, but—" I cut her off. Don't try to deny it. I know everything. How can you let this happen? They're your daughters." Dad stood up, his voice cold now. "You listen here, Kelly. Vanessa is family now. She's given Jake opportunities we could only dream of. If the girls need to pitch in a little, that's a small price to pay." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "A little? She's treating them like slaves and you're okay with this?" "You're exaggerating," Mom said weakly. "The girls are fine." "They're just what, Mom? Just being abused by their sister-in-law while their parents look the other way?" Dad's face turned red. "That's enough. I won't have you coming in here stirring up trouble. Vanessa is Jake's wife. She's wealthy, connected. She can give this family a future. If you can't accept that, then maybe you're not really part of this family anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at them, these strangers wearing my parents' faces. "So that's it," I said quietly. "You're choosing money over your own children." Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad just glared. "Get out," he said, "and don't come back until you're ready to apologize to Vanessa and Jake." I left, my legs shaky, my heart breaking all over again as I walked away from my childhood home. I realized a hard truth. I couldn't change their minds. They were too far gone, too seduced by the promise of wealth and status. But I couldn't abandon Emma and Lily. Somehow, some way, I had to find a way to help them, save them from Vanessa, from our parents' willful blindness, and from the fate they seemed determined to accept. That day started like any other. I was preparing for a big meeting, reviewing notes and straightening my jacket. Then I saw the name on the guest list: Robert Thompson, CEO of Thompson Industries, Vanessa's father. My heart raced. He wouldn't know me. I'd missed the wedding after all. But I knew him. The man whose money had torn my family apart. The meeting began. All handshakes and forced smiles. Robert didn't give me a second glance. We discussed business, crunched numbers, argued points. Then came the coffee break. I found myself next to Robert, both of us refilling our cups. He started chatting, casual small talk, that somehow turned to parenting. "You know," he said, puffing up with pride, "I raised my Vanessa to be humble, never let her flaunt our wealth. She grew up modest, well-mannered, even married a regular guy. She respects everyone, treats them like family." Something in me snapped. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and hit play on a video I'd almost forgotten about. There was Vanessa, red-faced and screaming at the dance rehearsal. "You stupid scum!" she shrieked on screen. "Pay $3,500 or get out. I won't have you ruining my wedding." Robert lost all color in his face. He was shocked to see his daughter criticizing the other bridesmaids, my sisters, and me. There was silence after it was over. "I didn't know," Robert muttered. "She's so courteous to me all the time." I believed that I did. I braced myself for fury, expecting him to burst out. Rather, he gazed at me, his eyes beseeching. He pleaded, "Please tell me everything." That's exactly what I did. The hurtful remarks, the forced labor, the way she made my family hate me. Robert appeared to grow older with every syllable. When I was done, he murmured, "I'm so sorry. I was a bad father. Permit me to attempt to put this right, please." He stood up before I could reply. "Join me," he commanded. In silence, we made our way to Jake and Vanessa's home. Robert's knuckles on the steering wheel were white. It was a worse scene inside than I had thought. Emma was there, cleaning floors while dressed in a maid's costume. While lounging on the couch, Vanessa gave commands. Robert lost it. "Vanessa! What does this mean exactly? How dare you treat your own family members in such a manner?" Vanessa's surprise gave way to rage. She gestured to Emma. "I will not be sorry to my servants." Robert went purple in the face. "That concludes everything. You've been disconnected. Both money and a house are gone. I'm embarrassed to address you as my daughter." Jake made an attempt to step in. "Please, sir. The females have no problem lending a hand. It is not really significant." Robert turned to face him. "And you? Allowing your spouse to mistreat your sisters? You've got the boot. You two together. Beyond my line of sight." His voice softened as he turned to face Emma and me. "I really apologize for everything. Let me assist in making this right, please." Vanessa's screams vanished behind us as we drove away. I experienced a range of feelings, including sadness, relief, and vindication. At best, this was a Pyrrhic victory. Robert's action had immediate and devastating effects. Rather than recognizing logic, my parents strengthened their backing for Jake and Vanessa. They were enraged with me and accused me of destroying Jake's cozy existence. "How could you harm your own brother in this way?" Mom sobbed while on the phone. "You took everything away from him, even though he had everything." Dad was even worse. He spit out, "You've always been envious of Jake." "Well, congrats. You've brought this family to ruin. Please stop bothering to visit. This is not the place for you." Though their remarks hurt, I didn't take it personally. They had long since made up their minds, and neither my sisters nor I had been their choice. I went all in on the project that had kept me in my hometown for so long, and I finished it. I packed up my flat the day it was finished and never looked back. In need of a new beginning, I got work in a different city. A few months went by. I tried to ignore the family that had rejected me as I started a new life and met new friends. However, my concerns concerning Emma and Lily would not go away. I would text, but the replies would always be brief and evasive. Then there was a knock at my door one wet night. When I opened it, I saw Lily and Emma completely drenched and holding their suitcases. Emma murmured, her voice breaking, "Kelly, we require your assistance." They told me what they knew over steaming teacups. Broke and unemployed, Jake and Vanessa had returned to live with our parents. However, it had made Vanessa even more despotic rather than humble them. Lily said, "She treats the house like her personal kingdom." "And us? We are merely her attendants." Emma said, "Mom and Dad don't do anything. They let Vanessa do whatever she wants because they're so afraid of Jake leaving. I was really sorry for them. What kept you from telling me sooner?" They exchanged a look of guilt. Lily said, "We were scared and ashamed. Vanessa threatened to worsen the situation if we got in touch with you." "However, we reached a breaking point," Emma remarked. "Could we please stay with you, Kelly? Just till our careers and homes are secured?" I made no hesitation. "You are welcome to stay for as long as you need." We were all getting used to living together as grown-ups, and my tiny apartment made things difficult at first. But we eventually found our beat. I practiced interviewing skills with them and assisted them in refining their resumes. We spoke through years of hurt and miscommunications while lying in bed late. Months stretched into weeks. While Lily enrolled in school at a nearby community college, Emma secured employment at a neighborhood bookstore. They refused to pay their share of the groceries and rent, even after I assured them it wasn't required. I came to the realization that our parents might never change, and that Jake and Vanessa might never change one evening, as we were laughing over a ridiculous story at the dinner table, but that was okay. It was sufficient that we had each other. I knew we would be all right as I gazed at my sisters, strong, tenacious, and at last able to be who they were. As a true family should, we would face whatever came next together.